Hey, it's Phil, and I cannot believe this is episode 200 of the Ear to Their Disney podcast. Episode 200. And that's just the official episodes. I think with the words of the week and the magical minutes and the It's a Food World, however short-lived that was, we're well over 340, close to 350 episodes, or shows, but this is the 200th, the official 200th episode of the show. So before I get started, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for clicking play. Thank you so much for listening. If this is the first episode you're listening to, that's cool, but I want to talk about a lot of stuff on this one that you might not know about. Now, if you've listened to a lot of shows, then hey, you're in for a treat. We're going to go back and listen to some of the old shows, talk about what's coming up soon, and hopefully, I know we're going to have a great time. So thank you so much again for being here, and I hope you enjoy episode 200 of the Ear to Their Disney podcast.
From the Ear to Their Travel Studio, this is the Ear to Their Disney podcast.
The Ear to Their podcast, it's time to start the show. Be sure to hold on tight, here we go. Exploring all the different Disney destinations. Ear to Their, it's time to start the fun.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ear to Their Disney podcast, episode number 200. Yeah, this coming from the guy who a few years ago didn't want to record a podcast, and here I am, 200 official episodes later. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening today. And we're going to have fun. And who would have thunk it that a few years ago when the idea of recording a podcast was so terrifying to me that I'd be here today recording this one. Listen, this podcast has changed my life. It's an amazing thing. It's been such a cool experience. I have no plans to quit anytime soon. It's going to keep coming at you. New episodes are going to come out each and every week. Come rain, come shine, come open Walt Disney World, come closed Walt Disney World, quarantine or no quarantine. And if you're listening to this in 2025, yes, I recorded this hopefully towards the end of the quarantine. Who knows? The great quarantine of 2020. Anyway, enough of that. Thank you again for being here. So I want to get into everything that this episode will be. I'm going to play some of my favorite clips. We're going to revisit some of my favorite times with my favorite guests over the last few years and over the first 199 episodes of the show. We're just going to have a good time. So grab a drink. Oh, sorry about that. Let me get rid of that. Let me get rid of that phone call. All right, so grab a drink, grab a snack, and as a let me get rid of this. Hello?
YOLO.
Hey, it's Johnny. Is this Johnny? How are you, man?
Oh man. I'm good, man. I just got back from a little trip from Puerto Backyardo.
Yeah.
Sorry I didn't call you to book that trip, but it was a last minute kind of deal. But I was calling because I had this idea. I want you to sit down and relax on this one. This is a good one. And I've been reading the news. I know that might be a shocker, but you read about all these like CEOs, like Bob Chapek. He with did a discount on his salary for Disney. What if you did this thing for COVID, man? You did this thing where you went, you know what? Gonna do a special. I'm going to offer my services for like $50. Normally it's like $100, right?
Yeah. Listen, real quick. First, you and I, I've mentioned this to you before. I don't charge anything for my services. The other thing going on is I'm recording my 200th episode of the podcast right now. So,
oh, geez, sorry to interrupt that.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I haven't had you on in a while. I haven't talked to you in a while. So how would you know? But yeah, I'm going to, since my services are free, I really can't offer that discount.
Wait, they're what?
Yeah, they're.
When did you start doing that?
Oh, that's been like forever. Remember, we've talked about this before.
by the eyebrows of Eugene Levy. I'm shocked.
Well, I do appreciate the advice and the offer, though, man. I mean, really. And we haven't talked in so long. Is everything going all right with you?
Oh, man, it's good. It's good. You know, Grandma finally, she passed.
Wait, what? She passed? You didn't tell me that. I feel horrible, man. Are you okay?
Oh, dude. Hey, sorry, man. I fingered the mute button. She passed a kidney stone. She was hanging on to that thing for months. So she even named it. It was Earl. So she said bye to Earl. She's okay now.
That's good. That's good.
I've been working remotely since, been on this social distancing thing.
Oh, yeah.
The National Moped Association is now going to be, this is groundbreaking, man. You got to tell everybody this, whenever you get a chance to go live or something.
Well, can I use this? Can I have your permission? I know you've been super secretive and not on the podcast, so can I use this on the recording of the episode?
Totally, man. You could be like the Walter Cronkite. You're breaking this news. Man.
Awesome.
They're doing a name change. Man.
Oh, no.
It's now going to be the International Moped Association. Oh my goodness. Do you know what happened?
I don't.
So, I'm up. Man, they got me working remotely now, so I've been working on, been doing my thing. We're organizing the rallies. We've been doing a lot of, Zoom calls on the rallies now. We've got the riders riding down in their hometowns on Zoom.
On Zoom while they're on the mopeds?
Yeah, they're zooming on Zoom. You dig it? They're zooming on Zoom. But here's the thing. We got our first international rider the other day. He's from Georgia. So we're going big time now. The International Moped Association. We're getting new T-shirts made and everything.
You're out of Florida now, so you're. It's not just national to Florida; it's international and includes Georgia.
It's big time, man. It's huge.
I'm sorry. I don't mean. I'm not laughing at you. Of course, I'm laughing with you.
It's good time, and it's. So other than that, we're doing good. Life's good. Kids are good. Grandma, she just got back from tubing down the Chattahoochee River with her club. Karate dojo is closed right now, which has been kind of a bummer. So she just practices in the backyard, kind of a sight. Neighbors are a little concerned, but it is what it is. How are you doing?
We're good, man. Everybody's well. We're doing fine. Homeschooling. I know. We've talked. I talked to Mrs. Shortsleeve. I know you guys are doing the homeschool thing as well. How's that going for you?
Oh man, it's a good thing that Mrs. Shortsleeve is doing it. Leave that one to me, boy. That'll be that'd be quite a lesson these kids have to learn. Hey, I got my little one here. Hey, Squirt, you want to do wood whittling right now? Wood whittling class? Put the miter saw down. No, we're not doing power saw. We're doing whittling. Got to start them off in the basics, man. They want to go right to the big stuff. Got the 7-year-old there. He got the bandsaw fired up and ready to go. You start with the basics, right? You can't go straight up to learning. You learn to ride a bike, you get the training wheels. You don't start doing wheelies and ollies and half pipes.
I mean, you don't. In Florida, but here, I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, dude,
Florida, man, I tell you, it's a beautiful place now. Everyone's staying home, getting into trouble.
Yeah, well, man, listen, it was really nice to catch up with you. I got to get back to the episode because...
you're recording now?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Oh, man, I'm sorry, dude. Yeah. You think about that idea. You throw the 50% coupon out there. I think you might see some good business coming. It's goodwill is what they call it. Goodwill discount.
All right, man. Well, that's what I'll do. We'll think about it. I have to talk to my boss, who's my wife, and we'll see if we can work that out.
Run out of the flagpole. Hey, wait, one more.
Yeah. Go. Yeah, what's up?
One more thing. Hey, brisket for life.
I thought you were going to tell a story. I took a sip of my drink and I almost spit it out. Brisket for life, man. Thanks for calling. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, man.
Now grab a drink, grab a snack, and as a famous mouse once said, on with the show. so happy that Johnny Shortsleeve called in today when I was recording the episode. And I apologize for the audio quality. It was a phone call and technology is not perfect. But hey, I'm glad you got to hear from him and he's doing well. So that's all good news. So when I started to plan for this episode, I started to listen back to old shows. There's 199 numbered episodes. And like I said, there's a lot of ones that are the different styles of episodes. So I started going through, I was like listening to episode 1, and I was like, this is going to take forever. I got to like 45 and I was like, listen, I'm just going to sit down and make a list of moments that people have told me they have liked, listeners have told me they enjoyed, or moments that I've really liked and either laughed at or thought were poignant or enjoyed. And that's what this show's going to be. But first, I am going to get in the DeLorean and go back to February 1st, 2016. Why is that date significant? Well, that is the date that I published the first ever episodes of the Ear to There podcast, which would later be renamed the Ear to There Disney podcast. Now, listen, do yourself a favor. I'm doing this for myself only. So feel free to hit the skip ahead button 30 seconds so you don't have to listen to this. But I am going to right now play you the first few seconds of the first ever Ear to There podcast. Please skip ahead. Here we go.
Welcome aboard the Ear to There podcast, the podcast that'll help you vacation like a pro in any Disney destination. For those of you standing, please sit down and hold on throughout our journey and get ready to learn how to have the time of your life. And now, here's your host, Phil Gramlich.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ear to There podcast. My name is Phil Gramlich, and this is the podcast that will help you vacation like a pro in any Disney destination. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am 40 years old. I am thrice divorced, and I live in a van down by the... No, I'm just kidding. And I hope some of you guys got that. The truth is, I'm just a huge Disney fan who has been fortunate enough to experience the Disney theme parks, resorts, cruises, and everything in between an awful lot throughout my life. All right, we're back in 2020. A couple of things here. One, the intro was really good. I missed that guy, and I still like the music, and I still like the intro, the old intro. I like the song better. You know, the Ear to There podcast. I like that guy better, but this guy was pretty good. Now on to my complete lack of energy and excitement. Oh my God. If you listen to that first episode, how on earth did you ever make it to episode number 2? That was brutal. Brutal to listen back to. But hey, listen, if you're thinking about podcasting right now, if you're thinking about it, and you listen to this show and you've been listening for, who knows, 20 episodes, 100 episodes, and you're used to this kind of energy level and this kind of voice from me, don't worry about it if you start and you sound like I did back in 2016. Listen, it gets better. You find your voice, but holy cow, was I terrible. Listen, you can get better though. That guy would have never gotten that old Phil from 2016 from February. He was never getting a celebrity Disney guest. There's no chance. Unless, of course, that celebrity, that Disney celebrity didn't do any research. And that's what I think happened to my first ever big celebrity guest. And really, he's a huge, huge celebrity guest inside the Disney community. And I mentioned this on the podcast before. My first ever big time celebrity guest was Rolly Crump. Now, Rolly, of course, is a Disney legend in every sense of the word. He has windows on Main Street in Disneyland and in Walt Disney World. He worked on attractions like the Enchanted Tiki Room and the Haunted Mansion, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. It's a Small World. I mean, listen, Rolly is huge, and I had no business, none, interviewing him back in 2016. But I reached out to him and his wife, Marie, and somehow a few days later, they responded. They agreed to do it. And I know a lot of listeners have said this episode, this interview, is still one of their favorites. And when I say I went in and heavily edited this and re-recorded some of my questions because of the way I asked them and my nervousness. It was not or is not an exaggeration. So for all of you who are thinking about podcasting or thinking about, going on Facebook Live or YouTube Live or doing any of these live streaming things, listen, you can get a lot better. And as bad as I was when I interviewed Rolly Crump, it's still one of my favorite interviews of all time. So I wanted to play a little clip, one of my favorite clips from Rolly. And this was his answer when I asked him about what it was like, or actually one of his answers. We actually talked about working on a haunted mansion quite a bit during the show. But I asked him, this was an answer to one of my questions about working on the haunted mansion.
Well, I always felt that the mansion should be scary.
Right.
And even Walt said people love to be scared. So I always worked on stuff that was kind of weird and that was different. And because I just felt that we should, and I saw a film, Beauty and the Beast, that was a French-made film. And in it had all these human arms that held torches in the hallway. And then there was human heads that let green steam come out of them. And I thought, this is the kind of stuff that should be in the Haunted Mansion. So I started drawing up all kinds of crazy stuff. I did a candle man, a man that was standing there with his hands up in the air and his fingers were all the ends of candles and stuff. Right. And so I started developing these crazy characters. And we were going to give an exhibit to Ideas to Walt one day, a group of us, all of us. And I had all my stuff. It was kind of weird, but my management was a little concerned about Walt seeing the weird stuff, so they had me over in the corner with all my stuff. And then everybody else had their presentation right up front. So we got finished, and Walt said, "Is that it for today?" And Dick Irvine says, "Yes, that's it." He said, "Well, what's this stuff over in the corner?" And they said, "Well, that's something that Rolly's been working on." He said, "What is it that Rolly's been working on?" They said, "We don't know. You ask him." So he asked me, and he and I both sat in our chairs, and we rolled over, and I told him at that time exactly what I told you about the fact the film I saw, and I felt that we should have weird stuff in there. And so Walt just said, "Yeah, but this stuff is really weird." I said, "Yeah, I know." I said, "I just want to do something different." And he said, "Well, how are you going to use it?" And I said, "I don't know." And so we got into this I don't know back and forth, and finally he said, "That's it. I'm out of here." So he got up and left, and everybody came over to me that was in the room and said, "We knew that Walt wouldn't like it. We knew that it was too weird." And I said, "I don't know. I know, but I was having fun with it." So the next morning I came to work, and Walt Disney sitting in my chair at my desk at 7 o'clock in the morning. And the first thing he said to me was, "You son of a..." And I thought, "Oh, my God, what have I done now?" And he says, "I didn't get an ounce of sleep last night because of all that weird stuff you showed me yesterday." And I said, "Well, those are the ideas that I have, And so he says, because I didn't get any sleep, he said, I thought about it all night. He says, I think what we should do is have a museum of the weird. And he says, Rolly, then you can design all the weird stuff you want, and we'll tell the public and our guests that we've gone around the world to find weird things to bring to Disneyland." And I said, "Oh, that sounds like a great idea." So he had the rest of the guys come in, and he gave them a presentation on the Museum of the Weird, using my sketches as the bottom line on it. And when he got finished, he said, "Well, I'm going to go home and go to bed now because I didn't sleep last night." So he left, and after he left, they said, "Rolly, we all knew you had something there."
I love that story, and I'm so lucky to have been able to talk to Rolly among so many other people. But that was, like I said before, one of my favorite interviews. And if you haven't listened to the whole thing, it's about 45 minutes long. And we talk about the Haunted Mansion. We talk about Walt. We talk about Rolly's start with the company, the Enchanted Tiki Room. I mean, we cover a ton of stuff. So that was episode 11. So if you haven't listened to episode 11, go back and listen to it. I promise, I think you'll really, really enjoy it and enjoy Rolly's stories. He's truly one of the best storytellers the Disney company has ever had. So when I started the podcast, Rolly was on my short list of Imagineers that I really wanted to speak to, because he was one of the few Imagineers who were still around who worked with Walt Disney on a personal level. I mean, these guys would go to work, show up to work every day, Rolly and his contemporaries, and they worked with Walt. So how cool to be able to talk to him. And another one of the Disney legends and legendary Imagineers that was on my short list was, of course, my friend Bob Garr. Now, when I first started this show, I had a friend of mine who said, hey, Phil, who is your dream guest, right? Like, who do you really want to have on? And it was easy. It was Bob. And for a while, I think for maybe 100 or so episodes, I had tried to get Bob on. I had tried to find his email. I tried to find his phone number. Couldn't do it. Couldn't find it. Couldn't have him on. So I followed Bob on Facebook. And then one day I saw that Bob was doing these bus tours, the Waltland bus tour out in California. God, I don't know why I keep saying California like that. California. Again, I always sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger. California. I will become governor of a state that I cannot pronounce. Anyway, I saw that Bob was doing the Waltland bus tours. So I reached out to his manager, who I found by doing a little digging. And I said, hey, do you think Bob would want to do my podcast? And that was awesome because that worked out and Bob came on. And then a few weeks later, I was like, I wonder if I asked if he would do more. So, of course, I got in touch with Bob and I said, would you like to keep coming on the show if I promote the bus tour? And he said, yes. And we become friends. And God, again, how lucky am I? It's insane. And Bob is a heck of a nice guy. And I've gotten to know him pretty well. And over the last little while, we've talked about lots of stuff. And we've talked about Walt Disney and what it was like working for him. And I have so many favorite clips from Bob that I could make an entire show. I mean, I could make probably a 5-hour episode of only playing clips of Bob talking about Walt. But I narrowed it down to one that I think really kind of stands out in my mind of all the things that Bob has said about Walt to me. And I'm going to play that for you right now. What is the one maybe sentence that Walt Disney said to you that sticks with you still to this day?
There was so much about Walt. I don't think I could give you a sentence that he said, but I could share this. Whenever Walt, with the folks he had working with him, creating everything, when Walt had something nobody else in the world had, and he was showing it off to, Vice President of the United States, kings and queens from around the world, the happy pixie look on his face with his twinkly eyes and his flipping eyebrows, that was a picture of just total joy. We recognized it every time. And those are the things that you never forget about Walt's face.
And I love that one because we see Walt in photographs. We see him in sculptures and statues, in paintings. We watch him on video, but we don't ever get to see Walt in person. And we can't describe what it was like to kind of be there and see him and talk to him and watch his reactions. So it's a big one. So I really like that one from Bob. And kind of staying with Bob for just a minute. So many of us, myself included, obviously, want to know what it was like to work and be in Disneyland and around Walt in those earliest days. And there's not a lot of people around that remember that or that have experienced that these days. So that's another thing that I've talked to Bob a lot about. His experiences of working with other people, not just Walt, but working with other people inside the company. Do you think you would have been able to create all that stuff if you hadn't worked alongside some of those other Imagineers?
Well, this is a personality issue. The first thing I caught on to very early in life is do not wear a tie. Do not tell somebody that you are a licensed engineer, and don't act the slightest bit officious, because you will turn off so many people, especially people at the shop level and the maintenance level. You want to always be friendly to everybody and understand that on one side of the issue, you could talk to a Walt Disney just with an ordinary conversation. And at the same time, you could go down to the lowest maintenance level that you could find and ask some questions. And you would do it so that your conversation would fit all those levels from the top all the way down to the bottom. A lot of people don't do that. They want to, let's say engineers from Europe who have a diploma engineer, they are constantly going to remind you that they are the engineer and they are in charge. You will irritate people sometimes to the point that information you really, really want out of them, they won't give it to you because they would rather stand aside doing their work and watch your stupid idea fail, and they won't help you make sure something won't fail. So it's a case of always working with people, never, ordering people. Sometimes you got to order a little bit from the standpoint of time. We can't waste a lot of time if we got a tight schedule. But what you're walking around all the time talking to everybody at every level so that you can see with your own eyes the progress of everything. That's absolutely the key thing.
And that's kind of the way Walt would do business. He was someone that would talk to everyone in the same kind of way, right?
Yes, that was very natural to him.
Was he an intimidating guy to work with, Walt?
He would be intimidating if you weren't very good at what you do. And if you weren't very good at what you do, you really didn't have a long career there.
Okay.
Example, it was pretty common that somebody'd be hired by Walt and they'd be put to work, and then it turns out they're not so hot, or their ego is way too high for Walt's level. And Walt would move them to another building and another room, and then don't send them any mail and don't send any calls. And if they left within a week, he'd figure they were pretty smart. And if they were there at the end of the month, they were a lot dumber than he thought.
Now that's a good story. And really, it never gets old to hear stories about what it was like to work with Walt Disney. As a matter of fact, I did speak to another individual and record an episode with another individual who worked closely with Walt. And I know I've talked about this on the podcast a lot. I know I've posted it about this chat on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter a lot. And if you've listened to the podcast before, you know that I am going to say my favorite interview that I've done since starting this podcast was with Julie Andrews and her daughter, Emma Walton Hamilton. Listen, how often do you get to talk to not only a Disney icon, not only a Hollywood icon, but a world-renowned icon? I mean, is there anyone on the planet older than the age of like 15 who doesn't know who Julie Andrews is? No, I think not. And I've told this story before, but it's worth telling again, so I'm going to tell it. Like I said earlier, when I was talking to a friend and they were asking me who my top guests to get on the podcast were, I, of course, mentioned Bob Garr. I had already had on Rolly Crump, which was crazy. And then I said Julie Andrews. And I said Julie Andrews as a pie in the sky, kind of maybe 7-8 years into podcasting, I would get big enough to have Julie Andrews on the show. But I actually got her on the show not much later than a year after I started, which again was probably too early. But hey, I was prepared for that interview. I didn't have to edit it at all. What you heard is what happened in the interview, word for word, second for second. So after I had that conversation with a friend, I had watched Julie's Green Room with my family. And that night, after watching a couple episodes of the show, I went on to IMDb Pro, which if you were looking to get celebrities on your podcast, that's the way to do it. Go on to IMDb Pro, find their publicist or agent, but usually publicist, and write them an email and ask. So that's what I did. That night, I went on to IMDb Pro. I found Dame Julie Andrews' publicist's information, and I shot off an email thinking, hey, maybe she'll get back to me. Probably not, but it's worth a shot. So I actually forgot about it, and weeks went by, and too much information alert. I'm sorry. I was in the shower, and I always have my phone right next to the shower because I'm a technology addict. And we have like a glass paneled shower door so I could see my phone through it. And my phone rings and I look through the glass and it says New York, New York. And I thought, whatever. It's I don't know who that is. So I didn't rush and I didn't answer it. And I forgot about it. So like an hour later, I was actually playing ball on my front lawn with my kids. And I remembered, I had that voicemail from New York. Let me listen to it. And this is like 5:08 on a Friday afternoon. So I listened to it and it's a representative from Netflix. And she says, hey, I'm just calling. I'm so-and-so from Netflix. I heard you wanted to interview Julie Andrews. Her publicist passed me this information. We would love to have you interview her this coming week. Call me back. I didn't call her back. I didn't get it until after 5. So I freaked out. I called her at 5:09 All weekend, I freaked out. I blew my chance. I wouldn't get her on the show. Well, Monday afternoon, I get a phone call from New York again. I made sure I answered it, and we set up the interview. And a few days later, I was talking to Julie Andrews and her daughter, Emma Walton Hamilton. And here's a little clip of the first few words spoken to me by Julie Andrews. Thank you both so much for being on the show.
It's a pleasure, Phil, really, to be here. Thank you for having us.
So after I got over my mild heart attack right there, we did get to talk about a lot of things. And speaking of Walt Disney, I loved her story about when Walt Disney came to see her on Broadway in the play Camelot.
He asked if he could come backstage afterwards and came into my dressing room, and we chatted, and then he revealed that he had in mind a film of the books by P.L. Travers, Mary Poppins books, and would I be interested in coming to Hollywood to hear the songs and see the layout that they had developed for the storyline. And I remember thinking, gosh, that sounds wonderful, but with some dismay, I said, oh, Mr. Disney, I would love to, but I'm afraid I'm pregnant, and I'm about to have a baby. And he said, oh, that's okay, we'll wait.
So again, I can't tell you how cool it is to just listen to these stories firsthand from these just incredible people. It was so cool. Like heart beating so fast, I could hear it in my eyes cool. And as cool as that was, I had there was a couple cooler moments. Julie answered my oldest daughter, Alexa's question, which was really, really cool. Julie and Emma both did. That's on the podcast. This is episode 66 if you want to go back and listen to the whole thing. And there was another favorite moment that I had on the podcast. Listen to this.
Yeah, and Mom and I, of course, write children's books together as well.
Of course, we actually went to the library, my kids and I, this week, and we took out
You are a good dad, my gosh.
We took out The Very Fairy Princess, Sparkles in the Snow, and The Very Fairy Princess Follows Her Heart. We read them the last couple nights before they went to bed. So, yeah, my 6-year-old she's reading now, and you got to watch what you spell around her because she's starting, she picks up on everything that you spell. But
yes,
the books
indeed.
The books are fantastic.
They learn so much in those formative years, much more than probably ever again, in a way.
Did you hear what she said in the beginning of that clip? Did you hear that? That resonated with me so much that I had it put on a T-shirt and I wore it around the D23 Expo 4 years ago when I was in Anaheim on the convention floor. It said on the back of my shirt, Mary Poppins said, I'm a good dad. I got a lot of comments on that shirt. People were stopping me left and right. That was a really cool thing. So like I said, that's episode 66. So go back and listen to that one. And I mean, I've talked to, in addition to Disney legends that I've spoken to so many cool people over the last 199 episodes. I've gotten to interview and just meet and chat with just people that I never thought I'd have the opportunity to meet. It's been amazing and inspiring. Inspiring is a good word. It's been super inspiring. And one of the most inspiring people that I've met and talked to, and really one of the nicest people in the Disney community, was and is Stacy from the Disney Must-Dos. Now, if you're a Disney World fan, a Walt Disney World regular, you've seen Stacy, full name Stacy Oswald. You've seen her on the Must-Dos. I think it's a dozen years now that she's been doing it, 12 years. I don't know why I had to clarify. You know what a dozen is. But she's been doing it for a long time. And way back when I had the red and black lumberjacks with the hat to match. That's a Biggie reference for you non-Notorious B.I.G. fans. Maybe another day I can sing the song Juicy by Biggie or rap the song Juicy from beginning to end. I know every word. Anyway, way back, I don't want to do it again. When on episode 20, I had the awesome chance to talk to Stacy about her career and the years doing the Must-Dos. And I have to tell you, she really inspired me just chatting with her and her just super positive, upbeat attitude and outlook. She's accomplished a lot in her life. Like, you don't even know how many commercials and voiceovers and things that she's done. But we all, as Disney fans, know her as Stacy from the Must-Dos. Anyway, I wanted to pull a clip from her talking because I've thought about it a lot over the last few years, and it's one of those shows that I've actually gone back to and listened to a few times. She's definitely inspired me to just get started and just do things.
When I got to Los Angeles, I mean, I had some money in my pocket. I had made a plan that I was going to, I was coming out here to act and to do voiceover and on-camera work. There was no plan B, and that's kind of how I operate. I mean, that how they say leap and the net will appear. I always just leap high and big and know that I will land on my feet or fly. So I just, I came out here with big dreams and big goals, and it's been working really well for me because I feel like I'm really doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I try to make good decisions about the projects that I work on, and I try to pass on the things that maybe aren't quite what I'm proud of or would want my family to look at, so yeah, I mean, I really have been on a stage or somehow in front of an audience pretty much my whole life.
Now, unlike Stacey, I have not been on a stage or in front of an audience my whole life. I've had a bit of an audience for the podcast for the last few years, and I've enjoyed the heck out of it. So again, it's not the point of the show. It's not to be all rah-rah and tell you to, you know what? You can though. I'm gonna do a 180 here because like Stacey said, you can go for it, man. Why not? I did. Here I am on a podcast celebrating 200 episodes, and I thought I'd never do one. So that's why I included that clip. It just speaks to me, and I hope it speaks to you as well. Now, speaking of inspiring and inspired, another person I got to speak to because of this show is former Disney Imagineer and Disney author Jeff Kirti. Jeff has led a super cool, interesting life. From being a kid obsessed with Disney to working in theater to kind of giving up on his Disney dream and then circling back later and being hired by Disney Imagineering. And he worked alongside guys like Claude Coates and Herbert Ryman. I mean, the legends among legends in the history of the Disney company. And we talked about a lot of interesting things. Now, this was back on episode number 116 of the podcast, if you want to listen to the whole thing. But we got into taking chances and changes, and somehow that led to me asking about the change to Pirates of the Caribbean a while back, where they made the auction scene different and they put in Red the Pirate. And Jeff had a really interesting kind of answer on that, so I wanted to play that for you because I think it's really, really cool as well. I get it. I get why people were upset. I understand it, but for me, I like you said, it's Disneyland isn't the Disneyland you grew up with. Disney World isn't the Disney World that I grew up with. It's different. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing.
Well, and I'm a bit of a romantic anyway. I'm sort of the mind that a rose is beautiful in every moment. And part of the beauty of a rose is it's going to die. And that's why you treasure it and love it and look at it. And I'm not a sentimentalist about things. I don't think that everything should sort of be preserved behind glass. So it also has to do with sort of a worldview that you have. The reason, and that really came into a lot of its being when I had children, because you look at kids and every single day they change. And you have to really get comfortable with the notion that they will grow and go away. Otherwise, you make yourself nuts.
Yeah.
And I've gotten that way sort of with everything of a life experience, which is the beauty of it is that it doesn't last. And so you have to sort of live in gratitude and appreciation. I got to go to Disneyland in the 80s when it was my Disneyland. And the group of friends I have from that time that I'm still friends with today, and the experiences we had there and so on, they're treasured in memory. They don't have to be reenacted. I reenact them in my mind enough. So that sort of goes to that whole notion of change. A kid who grew up in the late 90s going to Disneyland feels very different. I was in my 20s when Ducktales was brand new. I didn't grow up with it like the generation that's looking at the new Ducktales now and having a total nostalgia, burst. That's part of the whole Disney culture, is the passing on to generations and sort of carefully crafting how you pass that talking stick around the campfire. Disney's been really good at it and really good at not messing it up. and really good at giving the next generation the story and saying, now it's your story to tell. That's another reason I've stuck around Disney for as long as I have, is because I'm part of that activity, and I respect how much the company has curated that culture. Even silly things like changing the auction scene in Pirates is sort of part of a larger cultural component of Disney, where they're really curating who Disney is and what they mean to audiences. And I got to admire that.
I just love Jeff's kind of take on the direction and on the culture of the company and of the parks. And there's no really easy way to segue this, but I wanted to get this clip into the show somehow. So Jeff did mention Ducktales, and it made me think of one of the other celebrity guests that I had on a while back. And he did voices on the original Ducktales. He's also done voices on the new Ducktales, including our favorite, one of my favorites, Darkwing Duck. He's also the voice of Winnie the Pooh and Tigger too. Sorry. And of course it's Jim Cummings. And I was super excited to have Jim on the show. And he did a bunch of his impressions and we had a lot of fun. Such a nice guy. And that's episode 64 if you want to listen to it. You know, I remember that week I interviewed Jim Cummings and Julie Andrews in like this same week. That was a big week. That was a big week for me. But he did so many of his voices. He did Ray from The Princess and the Frog. And of course he did Winnie the Pooh. But he told me a story that I didn't really know. I did a little research and I asked a question. So here you go. Here's me and Jim Cummings. And I kind of flubbed the question, so I apologize. But it's us talking about the movie The Lion King. I read somewhere that you read, or I'm sorry, you didn't read. You sang for Jeremy Irons in The Lion King?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did all the singing. He does the speaking. I've never been so powers of retention. That's all him. But every time you hear "be prepared," that would be me.
So was it because he couldn't sing, or were they worried about it?
A lot of singers don't act, and a lot of actors don't sing. And since I can't do either one, they let me do both. So I think that's the answer. There was some talk about his pitchiness, and he's a smoker. Most people, tons of people from Europe are, and that doesn't always lend itself to mellifluous singing tones, that type of thing. So I ended up, let's just say that they thought, well, let's have Jim sing that,
Right.
We'll just sweeten the pot a bit here, no problem.
Yeah, that's cool.
But
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So, no. So I just sang it, and then it's a little bit him. Oh, here I am. Then little Jeremy, then me, then goes in and out. So it came out really well, and Jeffrey Katzenberg didn't catch it, so we snuck under the wire, I suppose, right?
Oh wow, that's cool. I didn't know that he didn't know about it. That's very cool.
No, he didn't know until it was all over with, and they were like, see, what are you guys worried about? It sounds great. He's fine. They go, well, that's not him. What?
That's
what
great.
do you mean it's not him? Of course it is. It sounds perfect. He goes, well, that's a little bit him, but it's also Jim in there. You're kidding. No. So, but hey, it's too late.
Yeah, right.
I think the movie's out.
Did you know that he did a great Jeremy Irons impression? Did you know that he did the singing voice of Scar? Because I certainly did not. I read about it. I remember that morning in some article doing the research, and I asked him, and I'm so glad I did because that was such a good story. And speaking of stories, see the transitions? Oh my gosh. That's what a pro does, people. Listen, I'm just trying to get this episode out there with all the stuff that I enjoy and I've been told other people enjoy. So the transitions might not be that smooth, but thanks for hanging in there with me. I've had a lot of awesome co-hosts over these episodes. And in the beginning, one of my co-hosts, my wife, Ames, or her real name is Amy. I call her Ames. Of course, she really didn't want to do the show. But after a little bit of convincing, she did an episode here and then an episode there. And then after one of my regular co-hosts, Johnny Shortsleeve, couldn't record much anymore, she became a much bigger part of the show. And she's a great storyteller. I have to tell you, she's hilarious, so funny, tells a great story. Episode number 141, we talk about our biggest mistakes, or really I talk about my biggest mistakes that I've made in Walt Disney World and on a Disney cruise. Go listen to that episode. The entire thing is funny and she shines and she's so good. But I wanted to play with a little tiny clip of one of the stories that we tell about her being stuck in Epcot with 2 strollers, 3 kids who were 2, 2, and 4 years old. It's a great story. Go listen to episode number 141, but here's a little clip of Amy telling that story.
So then I said, Lex, look around and tell me if you see a stroller that looks just like this one, because I thought any other parent, somebody knows how that they can come over and fold this stroller for me. So I was like, do you see a stroller that looks like yours? And she said, oh, Mom, yes, a purple one. And I said, once again, we're saved. Where is it? I'm like searching, around for the purple stroller. She said, oh, it was on the monorail 2 days ago. Because again, she's 4. So like,
all right. So you'll have to go back and listen to that whole show. Like I said, because there's a ton there and there's just too much to put it into this 200th episode. But I've listened to that episode, and I rarely listen to episodes that I record because I don't like the sound of my own voice, believe it or not. But that one makes me laugh every time. And speaking of time, yet another amazing transition. There was that time that I had a 3-episode series a while back where I ended up going back in time. Now, hear me out. Jump ahead about 30 to 45 seconds if you don't want any spoilers about that, because actually jump ahead about a minute. So if you don't want spoilers about the time traveling episodes, hit skip 1 minute right now. All right, you're still here? So I had that idea for the time travel episodes when I was out visiting Bob Garr at his home in California. We actually did talk about these tests that were done in 1971 where the government tried to prove that time travel was possible. So I did actually have that conversation with Bob. And then the idea for the time travel episodes kind of sprung from that. And there are more coming, so hang on to your hats. I have been working on 3 new time travel episodes, and I'm so excited to put those out soon. So keep listening to the podcast for those. But they take a lot of work, both recording them and editing them and putting the sound in and all that. It takes a while. So anyway, if you haven't listened to the time travel episodes yet, they are episodes number 135 through 137. And here's a little sneak preview. All right, good morning. Feeling really good today. I got about 20 minutes of sleep, so I'm all good. And I'm on the monorail. I just got on the monorail at the Polynesian, or as it's now known, the Polynesian Village Resort, and it's known right now where I am right now as the Polynesian Village Resort as well. But I was hoping we can get some of that the original Jack Wagner monorail recording, because I've never gotten to experience it. Maybe you have, I have not. So hopefully it's going to come on here in a couple of minutes.
Program while you're
right on cue. Sorry, I'll be quiet.
On the Seven Seas Lagoon, our exciting new water ski spectacular will be taking place throughout the day. Information and tickets are available right near the Magic Kingdom station. We're now on the final leg of our journey over the highway in the sky. Just ahead, you can see the beautiful Cinderella Castle, with its spires rising nearly 200 feet high. The Magic Kingdom is made up of 6 special theme lands: Adventureland, Frontierland, Liberty Square, Fantasyland, Tomorrowland, and Main Street, USA. The steam railroad at the entrance will take you on a grand circle trip around the entire Magic Kingdom for a glimpse into each land. And now, as we approach the station, please check for all your personal belongings and remain seated until the train comes to a complete stop. We ask that everyone disembark at this point.
So again, spoiler alert, but everything in that clip, from me talking to the voices, to the monorail noise, to the narration by Mike Wagner, they were all on separate tracks, and I had to combine them all into one track. And I had to do that with basically, 2.5 hours of recording. So that's what takes so long. But I think it turned out well, and I'm looking forward to releasing the next 3 for you soon. Now I'm going to wind down this 200th episode in just a minute. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode so far. I've had a lot of fun putting it together for you and reminiscing and listening to old clips, and it's been fun. And I have 2 more clips for you. One, this was one of the first times my friend Johnny Shortsleeve ever mentioned his favorite charity on the show, and I was totally and completely taken aback. See, in previous episodes, I had always given him the chance to plug something at the end of the show. So if he had a charity, a real charity, like Give Kids the World or something like that he was promoting, or there was something cool going on, he would mention it. Well, this is the first time he ever mentioned, not the first time, I'm sorry, this is one of the first times he ever mentioned the National Moped Association that he mentioned at the beginning of the show when he called in. And you could hear me go from kind of stunned and not knowing what to do to laughing with my hand over the microphone at the end of the clip. So without further ado, here he is, Johnny Shortsleeve, with his kind of closing remarks on one of the episodes. Anyway, I'm not talking badly about it. I'm just saying, bring the burger back.
No, but you're throwing some shade, you know?
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
If you read Urban Dictionary every morning, you would.
Yeah, I see it on Twitter. I'm like, throws shade. What is that? I don't know.
Yeah, man. Keeping it 100.
I'm too square. I don't know what that means either. I'm too square to know this stuff. Anyway, man, thanks again for recording. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and
man, appreciate it.
And yeah, I know you like to touch on, you got all kinds of noble causes you like to mention at the end of these episodes. So I want to make sure you have a couple moments to kind of mention whenever you want to talk about.
Oh, do you have a couple seconds?
Yeah, we have a couple. Yeah.
Is there a little tape left on the recorder?
Yeah, tape. Yeah, we're good.
I appreciate it, man.
We're not the other white tape, you remember, or the clear tape. Remember that? When we get to the clear tape and you only like a second.
Yeah, man, that was a good time, reel to reel, and oh man, no, honestly, I appreciate it. I mean, it's all fun and games, and we have a good time. But I had some friends, a new buddy I made, Kemosabe Carl. He works at this little nonprofit down here in Orlando. It's called the National Moped Association, 501c3. Really, really great organization, safety focused. I can't say enough good things about these people. I mean, really doing some amazing work. So tax donations, if you're looking for places to donate, it's tax deductible 501c3 organization. They have these things. If you subscribe to their list on their website, nationalmoped.org is the website. They have this thing called ALEC notices, Act Like You Know, Chico. With the ALEC notice that they just put out, I'm not exaggerating, literally about 30 minutes before we started recording, there's this new sting operation by the Environmental Protection Agency with the mopeds. This is like no joke. These are felonies, big time federal crimes that are going on right now. What's going on was, a popular option for the moped is the 49cc motor. That's the little hog. The big hog is the 50cc motor. But the little hog 49cc, you don't need a special operating license for that. So you can just, any old Tom, Dick, or Harry can ride one of those things. No special license required. But here's what's going on, man. And I was appalled when I read this. Like literally, my stomach got sick when I was reading this. You know what's going on, man? There's some moped mechanics out there. They're taking those 49cc little hogs. They're boring them. They're stroking them. It's basically outlaw grade performance. And they're putting high lift camshafts in there with these huge lopes. I mean, it sounds like a popcorn machine. It's like blah, 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 at the stoplight. I mean, it's just insane compression in these motors. I mean, they're not street legal. I mean, these people, I mean, excuse my language, everyone earmuff it. They're the skid marks on the underoos of this moped community. I mean, let me just call it as it is. This is just insane. I'm sickened by this, but I want to get the word out. I'm helping these guys because what's going on? These mopeds, not only are they not safe, they're not environmentally sound anymore because of all the toxin and carcinogens and CO2 and CO1 that's shooting out of these things now. They're not street legal, but you know what? They're also, this is the biggest thing. They're voiding the powertrain warranty on these mopeds. Like, what are people going to do when the things break down? They're not going to be able to take them into the shop and get them fixed. So I appreciate. I'm sorry, man. I'm passionate about safety. That's why I like these guys. They do great work. Sorry to get all revved up. You see what I did there? I said revved up. See that? Yeah, thanks for the time.
Though. No, you did. You were getting very passionate.
I'm sorry, man. Yeah, I gotta take it down. I got my red Solo cup full of Everclear waiting for me over in the kitchen. So as soon as I'm done here in the podcast booth, I'm gonna go over there and try to take it down a notch.
Well, I appreciate you not, imbibing. Is that the right word? Imbibing. I think that's right.
Oh, well, let me check on our dictionary. Hold on a second. Stand by.
during the recording. That Everclear can get you pretty fast. I've heard.
Oh yeah, man, it'll mess you up.
But all right, man. Well, I appreciate it. I'm sure the people over at the what is it? National NM.
National Moped Association. Yeah,
so
moped.org.
Yeah, so they're moped.org. All right, man. Well, thanks again. I'm sure they appreciate it. And I certainly appreciate. See what I did there? Look at that smooth transition. You coming back on the show, and it was a lot of fun. And the resort roundups are always a lot of fun. I think they're very educational, and I hope people listening. Not only I know that we're a couple of dopes and we laugh, but I think there's a lot of really good kind of information mixed in there throughout. In between the jokes. So I hope people get a lot out of it.
Right on, man. Brisket for life.
Thanks again, man. Now, I'm not sure if that's the birth of Brisket for Life or not. Listen, I had to go back and listen to a ton of clips. It took me a lot of time to get these together. So that may not have been the first time he'd mentioned Brisket for Life, but it's one of my favorites. And if you're a newer listener and you never heard of Johnny Shortsleeve, you never heard him on the show, go back. He's done like 50 episodes. The first like 150. Any episode that he's on is sure to be funny and sure to be fun. So go listen to those. And there's one more clip that I wanted to play for you. And this is me not humble bragging. This is me straight up bragging. And I don't need the credit for this. I don't need anyone to pay me any money for this. You'll see what I mean in a minute. But on July 15th, 2017, in the ballroom at the Anaheim Convention Center in Anaheim, California, just a few blocks from Disneyland, Disney made the announcement that a Star Wars-themed hotel would be built and opened in 2021, and this hotel would be a spaceship, a Star Wars ship, and it would be permanently placed right next to Disney's Hollywood Studios. Now, that shouldn't give me any accolades at all. It shouldn't matter that was announced. But almost a full year before, on August 15th, 2016, exactly 11 months before Disney announced their Star Wars hotel, my friend and frequent co-host Chuck Rodriguez and I did an episode. We recorded an episode called Imaginary Imagineering Resort Edition, where we came up with, well, just listen to the clip. And this is my Star Wars themed resort outside Hollywood Studios. Because listen, they're putting a lot of money into Star Wars, right? So why not have the Star Wars hotel? The lobby is the Death Star, and it's shaped like that, right? So you drive up, and there it is. There's the Death Star right in front of you. And the buildings on the outlying buildings are, those enormous destroyers from the Star Wars movies. They look like those. And you get to stay in one of those. And like the lobby looks like the command center from the Death Star, so it's all like shiny metal, and there's like, the cast members are in those original dark side, like geeky costumes from the 80s. Like those guys that work on the bridge in the Death Star.
Yeah.
And then I think bridge is, well, I don't know if that's the right word. I think that's Star Trek. But anyway, and the rooms in the main building, in like in the lobby building, they would have some rooms there that would be set up like the detention area where they kept Princess Leia in the first Star Wars movie. I think that would be really cool. Of course, the inside would have to be nicer than what she had, but on the outside, it could look like that. And then you have the pool. Get this. Okay, here's where I get super nerdy on you. Like I haven't been already. You're like just sitting there in silence, like, oh my God, I can't believe this.
I mean, since the day I met you. So,
so the pool, right, is a sand bottom pool, and the beach is all around to look like Tatooine. And the actual pool itself is the Sarlacc pit. Do you know what the Sarlacc pit is? From Return of the Jedi? When they're out on like the skiff at Jabba the Hutt's palace, and they throw the guys into the big mouth of the creature that's in the sand.
Yes.
The pool is themed kind of to look like that. What do you think? Terrible?
Of course it's not terrible. My only thoughts, and the thought that came into my head first before you even finished the first sentence was, cynical Chuck has to come out, as he always does, and say...
Wait, cynical Chuck goes away?
Yeah, cynical Chuck sometimes goes away. There's moments here and there, little moments. that if you think that the Walt Disney Company would waste anything about Star Wars on lower middle class people going to value resorts, you're crazy. They would do exactly what you said, and it would cost $1,000 a night minimum.
Well, I'm looking out for the little guy, Chuck. I'm looking out for.
But since no one else is,
I'm looking out for the family of 5 who scrapes and saves for 2 years to make a Walt Disney World vacation happen, and they love Star Wars and they want the Star Wars experience. Hey, listen, they could have charged extra for when they brought back the Star Wars the Jedi Training Academy, and it's still free. So. You can look at that.
Sure, that's a perfect correlation to $1 billion resort that looks like the Death Star.
Listen, this is why this is blue sky.
I know.
And
Cynical Chuck just can't help it come out.
Cynical Chuck.
That literally was the first thought that planted into my mind.
I'm sure it was.
Think about the geeky details. I only think about that.
I'm sure it was. All right, Chuck. Well, you are now a witness. You, the listener, are now a witness to the fact that I get the credit for the Disney Star Wars Hotel. That was me almost a year before Disney did it. Someone listened to my podcast. Listen, I'm kidding, but not really kidding. I don't want any royalties. I don't want anything like that. I want an Easter egg. This is what I want, Disney. Are you listening? I want my name in Star Wars language somewhere in the lobby of that resort. That'll make me happy. If not, you will be hearing from my attorneys. No, but come on. And now listen, I know everybody could have predicted that, but listen, who went on the record and said that would be an amazing idea? This guy right here. My name, Disney. Some Easter egg, some hidden secret that reveals that I am truly the designer, the inspiration, the Imagineer behind the Star Wars Hotel would be perfect. Don't worry about cut me a check. I know times are tough. Anyway, I had to end it on that because I thought that was really cool. Listen, I am under no real illusion that Disney heard my episode and decided to make a hotel. But if all the blogs and all the vloggers can make predictions and then get excited when they come true, hey, I want to be able to do it too. So listen, that's going to do it for this week's episode, for the 200th episode of the Ear to Their Disney podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Listen, this was a blast. I hope you had fun. I hope you enjoyed taking a walk down memory lane with me. And if you did, I'm going to ask you for a favor this week, for a favor for my 200th episode. If you haven't gone on to iTunes or Apple Podcasts, whatever they call it these days, and left a rating and a review on iTunes, listen, it takes 2 minutes. Not even. Please do that for me this week. I'm not asking for a 5-star rating. Whatever you think the rating for the show will be, rate it that. Whatever review you want to leave that. I'd really appreciate it. Hey, listen, there will be new episodes of the podcast next week. Look out for those time travel episodes coming up soon. Also, I just got agreements from the voice of Goofy, Bill Farmer. He and I are going to sit down and record an episode very soon. Also, the host of the new Disney Plus show Prop Culture, Dan Lanigan, and I are going to sit down and record an episode, I believe, next week. So we have new episodes, new celebrities, all new kinds of cool things coming at you. So thank you so much for being here for the first 200 episodes, plus the other 150 unofficial episodes. I hope you stick around for the next 500 more. Until next time, have an amazing week. Bye-bye.
Ear to there, ear to there.